Today we are going to talk about the magical answer for everything wrong in everyone's lives, duct cleaning. Duct cleaning will solve all your problems. No, it won't. Don't set those expectations with customers. You got to be realistic with them. It is not going to make you taller. It is not going to save your marriage. It's not going to do a lot of things. But it may help prevent issues from occurring. You take a look around at the TV there. It doesn't take a ton of dust and the right conditions for fuzzy stuff to grow. We don't call that mold unless we have a test that says it is. So that is suspect microbial growth in ductwork at this point.
Suspect microbial growth.
Yeah.
Super
Suspect microbial growth and not mold, because I do not have a lab report saying it is. So you don't want to be the contractor who says something is mold and then they go and do a bunch of remediation work on their home and then, oh, it actually wasn't mold. Their insurance isn't paying for it. You are. So that is suspect microbial growth. But we do want to do things that we can to prevent that. And that, it's going to come down to the conditions in the home and if there's food available. So that's just it's not a ton of dust that's in that duct, like a light film, pretty regular for a return. But that home had like 65% humidity when we had got that photo.
I would say real quick before we get any further down the road, good morning everybody.
Yeah.
As you can tell, this is Zach, and he is passionate about duct cleaning. For instance, like basically respected nationwide. Show of hands, how many of you would trust a duct cleaner?
You won't hurt my feelings if you don't.
After yesterday's presentation, now I would. Before we had the opportunity to hang out yesterday afternoon, Zach had some overlap with Brian, but after meeting with him yesterday, there is respect for sure with Zach. And what was the award?
Contractor of the Year with NCI.
So very, very big deal. But as you guys know, that is a big focus for what we're doing, and we've been focused on it, and then in 2025 as well is indoor air quality. So considering solutions that we can offer to our customers that aren't, just blue bulbs or whatever the thing is, or magic pills, but actual legitimate and real solutions. I'm really looking forward to the presentation this morning because it kind of gives you a peek behind the curtain of what this actually does and what a good duct cleaning actually is. Show of hands, how many of you guys have been on the heels of a duct cleaner that did not do a good job? Right? So punching holes, wrecking stuff, no idea what they're doing, probably charging insane amounts for nonsense. But that's not the way that we do things here at Kalos. So I just wanted to make sure you guys knew what we were doing. Again, Zach, you'll be able to tell, is very passionate about what he does, is very skilled to the point that you're booked for...
I'm booked at it next year right now.
Yeah.
I'm referring work to my competitors because I just can't get to people in a quick time.
Zach gets to cherry pick the work that he wants because he offers such an excellent solution. So again, I didn't want you to get too far down the road without proper,
I appreciate that.
Proper Kalos welcome and introduction. So take it away, Zach. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me this morning up until you get some emergency calls coming in. The big things that we're gonna look for in y'all's climate is you guys have a lot of fuzz board, duct board, and this white stuff is called a fiberglass repair coating. I chased Brian down in a bar, said, hey, you need to look into this stuff. It helps prevent the fibers from shedding into the airstream, make the system work better. So these coatings, what they do is when ducts get cleaned, here is what it looks like on the inside. You're knocking the non-adhered contaminants off of the ducts. So anything that air can move, you'll be able to get out of there. Bricks are hard. syrup is hard, things that are sticky are not going to come out, but things that are dry should come out. So when you're setting expectations with your customers, you want to be realistic and say, hey, I don't know how that motor oil got in your branch lines, but duct cleaning is not going to get that out unless you're putting a rag all the way through and you're disconnecting the whole line anyways. And if you're putting that much effort into it, just replace it. You got to be kind of realistic with what's worth it and what's not. But I have a little like pocket microscope that I brought, and having a piece of that duct board, I was like, hey, check this thing out. And I think you guys may be adding it to your service offering. So sorry for all the techs in the field that are now going to have another task to do. They're not busy enough yet, but it may prevent a lot of indoor air quality issues for you down the road. Because the coatings is not just fiber erosion, but it makes a pretty hard surface. It's about equivalent to sheet metal and like the porosity, where by reducing that friction that much, water can get on it and it's going to drip right off. For the most part, if it's like that, horizontal, might just sit in the bottom and puddle up, but it's cleanable and it's salvageable at that point. We have, in the wonderful world of duct cleaning, see what other kind of fun photos I can share. Here is what these coatings look like under magnification. So you kind of see where duct board gets worn down and just what it looks like in general up close is it looks like a filter, right? It's fiberglass, it's more or less fiberglass glue bonded together. These coatings on the left side, you can see of that circle where it has actually resurfaced the duct system and made it nice and clear.
Good morning.
Flat. Oh, nice of you to show up.
Well, you have a room full of people that have probably never even heard of the coating, so why?
Yeah.
Why would we want that?
You would want it, and air quality is what it's designed for. Indoor air quality is it's meant originally for the fiber shedding of fiberglass over time, and as the blowers beating on the airstream, as the air discharge is going, it's not like perfectly flat. So more of the velocity hits one spot, and then the air kind of bounces around until it stabilizes.
So fiberglass breaks down
Yes.
inside people's homes?
Absolutely. And people start to get irritated by it, and more so in drier climates. Here, with the humidity, y'all's risk is mold, but you don't call it that. Suspected microbial growth. So the main benefit that you'll have with your ductboard systems here is by putting this into the duct system, you're going to help prevent the fiber erosion, fiber shedding, but also create a surface that when water gets on it, it can be cleaned off. So you're not having to replace the duct all the time. You're able to kind of salvage what's right there at the unit that takes the brunt of the beating.
Let me just interrupt quickly because it may sound like Zach is like a salesperson for the sealant, but he's not. He's a duct cleaner. And so his experience with it is he's just sharing with us because he's passionate about it and passionate about duct cleaning. What we may deploy, what I'm considering is, and this is the same thing you've noticed, that you get more growth right near the equipment than you do anywhere else, right?
Yep.
That is what you talk about that for just a second.
Yeah. Moisture carryover of the coils comes right into the nice little bit of dust that goes. If the moisture's not making it through the coils and it's dripping in your return box, you guys, I'm sure you have seen growth in the returns. And then in the supplies where I normally will see it, as the moisture carries over from the coils and it has a little bit of nutrients right there, that's where it's going to start growing. If it can start growing, it will start spreading. But if you can get it to where it's not as easy for things to grow on it, if the surface is easier to clean off, then get impregnated within the fibers, then you're going to be able to help prevent a lot of the issues downstream from ever occurring by being proactive in the first place. So when you all go and do service to systems, you open up the duct board or get a system out of the way to replace it, you have a really good opening, good opportunity to get in there. Not too hard to take, a vacuum with a brush attachment. The NACA way would say have a HEPA vacuum, but I will leave that up to y'all. I know plenty of us have like shop vacs or whatever. Main thing is try to get a clean surface without destroying it. So you inspect and you assess the duct at the start. It's like, hey, I don't really know how your ducts would get out here with your conditions. In Virginia, we'll have some fiberglass that gets from the 70s and it will crumble in your fingers.
Yeah, I guess so.
60s. And if it crumbles like that, it's probably not going to be a very good bondable surface for the coating, or the coating might just weigh it down. It might fall off. So if it has some rigidity, some integrity to it, and you can vacuum it off, it doesn't have to be perfectly clean. It just has to be clean enough to bond, for this paint to bond into the fibers. And it will bond, but you can have a little bit of dust. I would say don't beat the duct up to then put paint on it. Try to keep the surface as nice as you can. If there's a little bit of dust, that's better. It's better to have a nice surface and a little dust than it is to have a perfectly clean surface as you could get it that's destroyed.
So quick question, what would NAPCA suggest if what we're seeing inside, so let's say you pull a unit out.
Yep.
So you're gonna put a new 4-piece in, you're gonna put a new box in underneath. We could seal the inside of that, and that's one of the things that we're considering. Okay?
Yeah.
Sealing the inside of it so that way you've got a nice clean surface. But say what you're attaching to now still has what looks like suspicious biological growth.
Yeah.
Can you paint on top of that? Would you suggest putting it on top of that or not?
So you're gonna have to kind of weigh how much you're seeing in there. If it's a lot, I wouldn't. I have a photo of where I certainly wouldn't in some of these. This is a good clean surface that shows.
That's after cleaning.
Yeah, this was after cleaning. There might be a little bit of, tiny bits of spots that come in, but it's, for the most part, it's not going to spread.
It's not like a massive line.
Yeah. Now, and that was fresh and clean. If we look like this inside, you better not coat that, because the stuff's just going to eat away behind it.
In fact, would you even want to disturb that? Like, would you want to?
I would want to replace that.
Yeah, you just want to replace
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. And that kind of, wish I had it a little bit brighter for you guys, but it is. You could walk in there and your tongue would tingle, your glands would swell up, and you say, "Okay, I'm gonna go put the respirator on now. Come back in."
Zach was telling me yesterday that a big part of his job is duct modification, duct replacement, duct repair.
Yeah.
All three of those things. Right.
Yeah. So I kind of do with duct cleaning, duct renovation together. So like David Richardson would speak about at the HVAC school symposium, is if I go and I have to disconnect flex lines to access the junction boxes or access the trunk line, depending on how things are configured, then when I reinstall that line, I'm going to pull it tight, put some saddles in, straighten it out, shorten it, and make it actually installed the way it's supposed to be done in the first place. So there is a good thing that happens when you do corrective duct, like small duct things with your duct cleanings, that your customers are going to feel better if their airflow increases in that room by a good amount. We have some very poorly installed duct systems in Richmond. I know you guys probably don't have any of that, but we get the nice little hang-in U's all the way through, and take the little, while you're there, take the steps to make things right and inspect it so that you know how to communicate to the customer. It's going to take us an extra, I have to budget in a couple extra man hours to fix all these connections as I go to each junction box and there's 3, 4, 5 lines. So the inspection and the communication and expectation setting with your customers, I think are the most important part. the actual cleaning and knocking the dust off is, since you were late, these are these are my favorite rods. These are abatement. To open these, you can close them, but you can't just disconnect them. You have to push it in and then pull the coupling down. They do that so that the rods don't disconnect inside the duct when you're pulling it back out and it gets caught on a screw or whatever on the back side, or you're pushing it forward. You don't want to have it just, man, that tool always falls out. It's a pain in the butt to use. I'm never doing duct cleaning again.
So talk about the different application between, because this is called an air whip, right?
Yes.
And there's like forward and backward attachments on it.
So this one's a forward air whip.
Okay.
You guys don't have a reverse air whip in the kit that Siobhan sent, so sorry for that abatement. But there is one that will, there's another whip, and basically the tentacles are all facing backwards like this. You run it to the end of the duct, and then you turn it on to pull things back towards the vacuum. The main premise of duct cleaning is putting the system under negative pressure, suction, and then agitating the dust inside of the system, pushing it towards the vacuum. So when you're setting up for a job, you would want to, with ceiling vents everywhere, usually what I would do is get like EPS, like 1-inch foam board, and cut those to the vent sizes, and use those, just wedge them up in the vents for the majority of them. You still got to keep a couple open so you don't try to collapse the lines, but do enough to prevent what's called cross-contamination. Or I just pushed all the dust through this branch and it went straight through the branch on the other side and into the other room. That will, especially if the homeowner's in there, not make them very happy. Not gonna get y'all good reviews, so I don't recommend that. But
Because I think most people are used to seeing brushes on ads and stuff, the brush systems.
So, yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
those are used outside of the parameters of what they were intended for most of the time. Or that's where you get into the overpromise, underdeliver side of duct cleaning that gives us a bad reputation. Is it's like, oh yeah, our magic brush and chop back, and we're just gonna send it through, pull back. And then they go and turn their system on, or you go turn their system back on. Boom, all that dust that they just loosened up just blew all over the home. You did not do them any favors, and if they called you for a housekeeping issue because it's always dusty, you left it a lot dustier than it was before. So you don't want to do that. The only kind of systems that I think that they may have any application for would be like an octopus head looking system, where maybe in the Midwest where they have every single branch coming off of one box at the unit and you're just feeding the brushes in all the way. But that is generally not what I recommend. You want to have the system under negative air, so suction, and be pushing the dust, dirt, and debris back to the vacuum. Normally, we try to hook the vacuum up at the system and do that just because it's easy to go from the supply side to the return side, but you still have to set up to protect the unit itself. So in the filter rack, I'll usually put like a trash bag over the filter and slide the filter back in if it's at the unit, and that will help prevent any of the dust and stuff, not all of it, but just about all of it, from getting up to the unit during the actual like duct cleaning on the return side. On the supply side, when I, like on an upflow system like this, and I pull the blower out and pull the heat strips out, I'm gonna put a cover over those coils and prevent them from getting a bunch of dust and dirt and stuff falling into the top side of them. So you do have to take some measures while you're doing if you do full service, to protect the unit. But if you have the unit out of the way, that's also a great time to have to clean it, because you don't have to set up that extra measure at the time. Some of the things you'll see really is gonna be like with your homeowners in a situation like this. What would y'all think would be the right thing to do?
So we're looking up through the top of the air handler here, right?
Yeah, there's my little heat strips.
You don't have to turn it around.
Here, I found this found that while I was duct cleaning at a hotel. That's some good coils. Yeah, you can see the heat strips like right those little bars right there. So we're looking in a supply plenum box.
So this is lined metal that we're looking at, right?
Yeah, we're gonna pretend it's ductboard though.
Okay.
If you're seeing something that looks like this right off the unit, what do y'all think is the right thing to do?
Replace it.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we did. So that I would say is too much growth for being ethical about just putting a coating on it. You know, like I said, if you're seeing like little pin spots, you're probably okay. If it's creating like a layer or sheet in any way, probably not. And especially if it's becoming more 3D on a 2D surface. Little mountain ranges in there. Yeah. Yeah, if you got little mountain ranges in there of fuzzy stuff.
And then you hear Mr. Horton.
So a good part of it will come down to your judgment and your experience. What have you seen? How does this compare to what you've seen? And if making recommendations for people around duct cleaning, inspect the system. I mean, you have to look at it, and it takes a little bit of time to do that. So if you have that time in your schedule, or you're able to, I don't know how y'all go with the scheduling on that, but you say, hey,
We don't know yet either.
yeah. If your customers are asking about duct cleaning, say, why don't we take a quick look and see if it even makes sense to clean, and tell me a little bit about, why are you inquiring about this? Do you have a concern? And start getting into the troubleshooting a little bit with them. Figure out, is duct cleaning going to solve their airflow issue? Probably not. You might find why they have an airflow issue while you're duct cleaning, but the duct cleaning itself might not be what causes the airflow issue to be resolved. So
Can duct cleaning improve airflow? You do
duct cleaning
really-
increases duct leakage because all the connections and stuff where the dust would layer up now have all that dust out. It's kind of like taking caulk off of a seal that was there. So yeah, we learned that during our energy study.
Yeah.
Duct cleaning increases duct leakage temporarily until the dust gets back into those. But what we have found with the air quality side of things is that in systems that are medium dirty, so kind of like that first return that I was showing, systems that have like a thin film of dust, but throughout the ductwork, when we go in, and so I've got an air advice monitor, and I set that up during my initial inspection, and take a preliminary inspection with it, do the duct cleaning service, and throughout the service, that the levels spike on like the particles go way up the whole time. So we run a HEPA air scrubber when we do it now. As a result of that, kind of learning, looking at the data. But you have baseline, you have like the spike during the day up, and then about 3 or 4 days later, it'll drop back down to the baseline and below, and it will stay a little bit below baseline, and then over time, it's going to eventually kind of climb back up. So as the system gets dirty, as the home, depending on how well they take care of it, gets more use. If the baseline is high enough that it's giving people symptoms in their home that whenever I leave home, I feel better. Whenever I'm at home, I feel bad. Maybe they have dust mites or whatever they have that could be in their system. If you clean it, get it out of there, it will stay down. The levels may return to baseline, but it might be where they were before. It had some stuff in it that your cleaning got it out of there. And that's why you have some success stories when people do a good job of duct cleaning. So here, you can see this I would replace. This is fine. Isn't that interesting? 2 different duct liners got used. This was in a commercial building, and the HVAC company ran out of the one duct liner. They went and bought another one. The other one they bought did not do them justice. So there are differences in the manufacturing qualities of different products. We get sweaty ducts in Virginia too. But the big things you want to look for are why do you want to get your ducts cleaned? what's your perceived goal, or what would make this a successful project for you to have your ducts clean? And then you have to use some judgment. If people, usually it's going to be if they're suffering air quality symptoms and issues. If they have mold through their flex lines, they have suspect microbial growth through their flex line, that would be a good time, like especially on the supply side, to say, okay, you got stuff in there, it's not going to just disappear. That may be a good time to go ahead and recommend it. Because they're going to be in their homes, and the prolonged exposure to that is what makes people get sensitive to it. So I say think of it kind of like sun exposure, but on a much wider timeline. So we can go out, we can be in the sun for a bit and probably not get sunburnt too much, but over time, some of us are going to get sunburnt sooner than others, and that's why different people in a home are going to have, I don't feel a thing, this is a waste of money, can't believe my wife's making me do this kind of attitude. And the other, wife and kids are going to be like, oh, thank God, I feel so much better now. And it's really hard to attribute and say duct cleaning was definitely the only thing that did that, But there is evidence that shows, hey, if you have a moldy system and it gets cleaned out, the mold spore levels do go down after the cleaning. So it's finding those thresholds of individuals that
I think I most commonly hear it for my home gets really dusty.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of dust build up on places. The second would be I have a musty smell.
Yep. Oh yeah, get those very often. My home gets very dusty. That may be a duct system issue. It may be a building pressurization issue. It takes a lot of dust, and it really takes a lot of dust in drier climate conditions to have the duct system be like a leading cause of why it's getting dusty. I would say the duct system is my secondary inspection point. I'm thinking it's a building pressurization issue. Do you have a central hallway return and your door's closed? Are you sucking air in from the attic? Where's the air coming from that's resulting in things getting dusty? And do you have evidence of that around like ceiling vents? If you take the vent down, is there a big black ring around it because it's pulling in the attic insulation or the attic air?
I got a question.
Yes.
If, let's say we go into like a 20 year, this is for the technicians too, like if we go into like a 20 or 30-year-old townhouse or a condo.
Yep.
And the ductwork is like disgusting, right? It's 2-3 stories.
Yep.
It's just nasty ductwork, right? Just coated and caked with growth.
All ceiling vents?
What's that? Yeah, all ceiling vents. So like a lot of those we can't access. We literally can't access anything.
Yeah, that's how my home is.
Yeah.
I got like a 3-story townhome.
Yeah. So what would be like a good conversation for the technicians to have with those customers when they're like, hey, I just want my ducts clean? How are we going to go about doing something like that?
You have to be really clear with setting expectations that, hey, there is some pretty big risk cleaning ducts between floors if they're flex ducts, especially because the line can tear. And then what used to be dirty but deliver them air now has a big hole in it that's not delivering them air. So that could be a big issue when you're having to cut into sheetrock and replace a line.
Yeah.
And you need to make them aware of, hey, this is a risk that because of the construction of your home, you need to be aware of, and one that for us to take on as a company, we may not take on as a company, I don't know. For us, I'll tell people, if you really want it done, we'll try it and we'll be as ginger and careful as we can. But if something goes wrong, we're not the ones that fix it, and we're not the ones that pay for that either. So this is, if you want it after that, I will do my best. If not, I think it's risky. And
so there's no other like good alternative solution.
You could take the thin rods. There's one, and I don't have it here with me, but there's a wiffle ball attachment that you can put on it. And not even using air pressure, you put that wiffle ball on it, and you take rags, and you take it around the wiffle ball and zip tie them on the back of it. and you're gonna pass them and push them through as gently as you can. And if you're getting caught on a strap or something, something's preventing it from making it all the way through, don't force it. Boy, have I done that too many times, and it has turned 5 o'clock nights into 8 o'clock nights. Going and getting another flex line, having to reinstall it. So I'm gonna try and save you all some of those learning pains for me over the years. But that would be one option, but it's gonna be time consuming. You go from cleaning a branch line and with things all set up, 5 or 6 minutes to like 30 minutes.
Is the purpose of that just to see if it gets caught, if you have room to use your
Cleaner.
The purpose of it would be,
That is-
yeah. So the purpose of it, you would take that rag, we usually use something called Decon 30, and that would be after like a mold or a water damage incident, that we're gonna run that through the branch system, and then we're gonna, at the end of it, when we've gotten it wet all the way through, take dry rags, put them back on, and push them all the way through, so we're not leaving a sticky film in the flex line. And if you don't put those dry rags on, you're gonna leave a nice sticky film for dust to adhere to. Yeah.
So a question that a lot of customers have would be like, well, can we just get it sanitized?
No. Nope. Because how are you gonna guarantee, A, you can't fog in your region because of ductboard. If you put that fogger on ductboard, you're gonna have ductboard that looks like the stuff I showed you earlier that was spotty everywhere. That probably got fogged by a dumb duct cleaner.
Yeah.
Don't fog. You don't want to make claims that you are going to be able to do something that you can't do on the manufacturer's label. And the manufacturer say, yeah, it's safe for fogging inside of ducts, but you have to get the whole surface like dripping wet. It's got to stay that way for a dwell time. And it's not, in my experience, my opinion, it's not feasible to do that unless you're running those rags wet all the way through. And even then, I never make that claim with customers. I think it's full of poo.
Because, a technical term, full of poo. Because what he was talking about, when we did 3 hours of the podcast on this yesterday, so what he was saying is that you get a sticky residue that's left behind. So if you're leaving a sticky residue behind on the inside of your ducts, it doesn't matter if at that moment you killed everything. Now you're gonna have more food source. Because again, what does it take for stuff to grow? You need a food source, so dust, dirt, anything, right? Generally, you need moisture, which we've got plenty of here in Florida. And you know, obviously, it's not gonna grow in full sunlight. So, like if you're right up by a UV light or you're in full sunlight, it's not gonna grow. But in your duct systems, we've got darkness, so we've got that covered. If we can handle dust and keep dust from getting there in the first place, then that can help. And also another factor is the substrate that it's on. So if you have a hard and kind of slick surface, it's much less likely that things are going to grow because it's much less likely that food is going to stick. Whereas ductboard is a problem because ductboard is, like he was saying, it's fibrous, so it holds onto it. And flex can be a problem, especially if it's not fully expanded. So the more that flex is compressed, the more you have ridges for stuff to catch on as the air creates turbulence and captures that.
Yeah. Flex is a bunch of speed bumps, man. If you're thinking just driving down a road nonstop, how tall are those speed bumps? How much are you dropping through your vehicle as air tumbles through there? So dust does the same thing. Boom, got to the first one. Oh, friction point. Next one, friction point. They will get dirty if they're installed poorly. A lot faster than if they're installed correctly. It's kind of an awesome opportunity. And because duct cleaners have such a rough reputation with just people in general, that means there's a big market opportunity to be a good duct cleaner in the area. If you're the only good one, you're going to cherry pick your calls at some point, because Brian's going to be hiring and say, man, that created a new headache for me. I'm going to get all these new techs in.
So talk about cameras. Like, how are you, because that's a big thing when people talk about cameras on the lines. How does that work in duct cleaning? Like, what do you look for?
So there's something called a ferret cam that you can actually, it's another attachment, but it's a little battery operated wireless camera you put on the end of the line, and then it will transmit to your cell phone or iPad or whatever you have in the field. And there's another one that has, I think Vent Vision has a watch that, like a little screen on it that you can put on and wear and look. And you can actually feed the camera through the branch, see that you made it all the way. It adds a lot of time to clean a branch, cam the branch, maybe clean what you didn't get, cam it again, clean it, cam it. So usually what I will do is I usually do about 2 or 3 passes in a branch line, and then I'll put the camera through. And then I'm gonna assess, you know, if it looks like a film, you'll see a lot of like horseshoes where all that dust settles on the bottom of the duct. It can stain the flex. You can have a clean flex. I've taken rags like right at the boot where it opens up, reached in, swirled it around, pulled it back out. There's nothing on it. But then I go and I put the whip head there and let it sit and rattle, and nothing cleans up. Or I think I showed a video yesterday where I have the whip head just sitting on it and whipping around, but nothing is actually changing in the surface of the duct.
Meaning, so you're just seeing a stain, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if the dust sits on it for long enough, it can look dirty, be clean, but because that plastic has stained over time. But yeah, with the cameras, usually I'm using those more for investigating. Always plenum boxes. Wherever you put your static pressure port, you can put a bore scope camera through and just get a look inside without having to necessarily pull a blower, pull heat strips to look inside the unit and figure out how much, if any, growth is in this plenum box right here. This might be a good candidate now for coating with that fiberglass repair coating, and it might be a good recommendation to make at the time. Like, hey, this is a preventative measure that's going to help stop things from being able to grow much down the line. So
Pretty much never open a supply plenum when the system's been sitting for 10 years and not see a lot of growth on the first
yeah,
week. It's just pretty much always there. So
yep.
preventative does make sense.
And we see, like in Virginia, there were some smart engineers back in the day, but they did about like a 4-foot metal plenum that came off of it, and then it would go out like a T, and it'd be ductboard that attached to it. No issues. They could have a humidifier on the metal and still rarely have many issues, or the issues might be the first foot or two. But I don't recommend humidifiers ever in my climate unless it's a bone dry house, and even then, I'm like, careful. You need to babysit this.
It's been a while. So, what's great? Oh, do you have any pictures of the fan, the fan that you use to pull air out of the system?
Oh yeah.
Just wanted to show them that quickly.
So that's what it looks like on the, I guess, backside of it. And this is great if you have a home where the driveway's on the right side, the system's all the way on the far left side, and you have to run hose that whole way. Or system's up in the far attic end. When you have to run along like a lot of hose to get to the unit, an electric's just not going to be feasible in that case. And I have guys in Virginia that have, only have an electric vacuum. They'll call me and say, hey, I need your help on this house. Can we plan on this for such and such date? And I'll help them out. I'm trying to just help people in the industry.
It's also just handy to have a gas-powered vacuum in case you have a big party and you need to clean up afterwards.
Yeah.
Don't push lots.
I won't.
I know, right?
So I will show, because we do have, and I suck at making videos, but I tried.
We also make videos about sucking.
Hey, you're right about that.
That's what you're doing.
Check it
sounds
out.
Weird, but it's real. Jake's.
Told my wife the competition's fierce, but you can see. I'm kidding. It was like Jarhead. But
Is that good with the direct return, or what is that?
Yeah, this was in the return, and this is just, we're at the very far end of the return, pushing back towards the vacuum. And it's just watching the dust come into it.
It's an exciting video.
That one had a whopping 72 views. But the importance of this is setting the expectations with customers. So it's going to be noisy. It's going to take time to set everything up, to do a full job, and do a thorough job. And because we don't want to do anything that's not a good job, it's going to cost accordingly. Oh yeah, dryer vents are, I mean, you guys clean those out.
Do you just use brushes and dryer vents?
We use compressed air.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot easier with compressed air, but it's a big piece of equipment to have on every truck. So to get this noise feasible.
Well, that is actually a good point. So what do you use? What do you use for your compressed air for the whips? Do you just have a big old air compressor, or what do you use?
Yeah, so I've got a cast air, 43 CFM, big 30-gallon compressor mounted in a trailer, and that I run the 2 air lines off of. So yeah, our cleaning prices are based off of if there's fiberglass or not, because that fiberglass, you coat it after you clean it.
Did you already say that you only coat?
Yeah, I won't clean fiberglass without coating it, and I'll show y'all after this video exactly why.
We haven't talked about that today.
Yeah, the NACA video. I didn't even get to show Brian that one yet. So it takes time to set up, and we only do one house a day. I don't like, and different places are going to have different requirements, different things, but I'd rather just keep my whole attention on doing a good job than focus on I've got to get out of here in 4 hours to get to my next home. So I think that's a easy opportunity for good companies to capitalize on.
This is what's going to happen to your money if you hire.
Yeah.
Now you know.
Any banks out here?
Well, at least use 20 and not 100. You don't want to make it reach too much.
Yeah. Hey, I kept it in reach.
It's like the third time we're on that.
So we fully clean the unit. I know different states have different rules, but I guess y'all are okay to clean the full unit as well.
So we definitely are because we're easy.
Yeah.
You mean for duct cleaners?
Yeah, for duct. So in Virginia, I can clean anything, but I can't like pull coils and clean them out that way. I have to do them in place.
Ooh, I like these little access doors. That's cool.
Yeah.
There's probably only working out though, right?
Yeah.
While we're at your home, we can also take care of your dryer needs.
So because it was freezing outside, I didn't want to turn the pump on and destroy it in that cold.
As you can see, my nipples.
That's a Florida, yeah. That's a Florida-based company that makes those. Innovate for the dryer vents. I don't know if y'all sell those already or anything like them, but they're awesome.
You just clean them, break them, walk away.
Oh man, that's right. Hey, you get the nice plastic baking out in the sun all day. Hey, I've gone up to plenty of them where I go and I go to lift the flap up and it just crumbles in my hand because it sits in the sun all day.
Some systems may require additional steps to restore the system to like new condition. Has flexible sides, metal with internal insulation. They require a special.
So you can do paintbrush application of this, and that's usually if it's a smaller area like a plenum box, where our plenum boxes are not like that. They're like 2 feet by 2 feet, roughly. I will hand paint those.
Of damaged ducts. Things like mold, fire or smoke, flooding or water damage, biohazard.
Yeah, you're saying the word mold here.
Materials.
You can't say that.
It's totally fine to say the
This is
word
our
mold,
team,
Brian.
and this is
You
Yeah.
can't say there's mold in someone's house.
Yeah.
Every home system is unique.
It's safe.
Oh yeah, Florida's got rules I don't know. So if I ever came back to see y'all do some duct cleaning, I'll do it with my hands in my
We would never
pockets.
advertise anything like the word mold.
Yeah.
No.
Because if you do, you're making a statement about it. Yeah.
Let me play this really quick because it will provide some context into how you can educate a customer about if you don't hire the right people, there can be
Yeah.
consequences.
How can we educate customers?
So this is straight from NACA's fiberglass training.
Our stance, that we will not clean the system without applying, the coating to it. And mainly because.
So they've gone through, there's a cancer risk of older fiberglass, things like that.
It was a job, not far here from our shop.
In Louisiana.
Very large, 5 or 6 system house, and we had bid the project versus one of our competitors who I consider to be very legitimate, and we had the first right at the job. Now, they said, we will actually have you clean it, but we don't want to pay for the coating. So we actually turned the project down. We still would have been a profitable job, and we had our competitor actually took on the project. Now, one of the units was right next to the owner's son's bedroom, and they ultimately released so much fiberglass into the air that the son had to have corrective surgery on his nasal.
It's the high stakes.
So impregnated with the debris that had come out post cleaning of the system. And this wasn't brand new fiberglass. It had fungus and other molds and mildew. So we had a young child that had to have actually 3 surgeries, 1 corrective and 2 plastic surgeries. And the ironic thing is we went back in and did the job with the coating after all was said and done, and the lawsuit ensued. And
That's on like the far end of the spectrum of what can go wrong, but it's worth having a conversation with your customers and saying, hey, are they going to be coating your duct board after they clean? Or are they going to just clean the duct board, blow a bunch of fiberglass in your home? Are they going, are they trained for duct board or for fiberglass lined insulation, or are they YouTube mechanics of sort?
Yeah.
Are they winging
this,
it?
I think could be come from an approach of just education, not trying to sell something, because a lot of times
Yeah.
like when you like challenge that, like, oh, you need to do this, this, and this, the customers kind of roll their eyes and just be like, okay, yeah, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it can come from a standpoint of like, hey, this is where when you're in somebody's home, like building that trust.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we actually care about you and your health.
Yep.
And then this is why we do it this way.
If duct cleaning is not done by someone who's knowledgeable and takes the right engineering controls and steps to control for the environment and the factors within it, it can do more harm than good. If you put a brush through that duct board system, it will do more harm than good. So there's that education standpoint of, hey, part of the reason duct cleaners get a bad reputation here is because they put their brushes through and tear all that lining, tear all the fiberglass up, and then they don't coat it.
Yeah, and then
And you just had your ducts clean, you feel like your eyes and throat and nose itch. Yeah. So the best things you can do, set really clear expectations with customers of what's achievable and what's not. And some of that just learns with practice. Like you learn it with practice and say, okay, we actually could clean these lines, and these ones actually they weren't able to be clean. And then the other part of it is just educate them. You don't have to necessarily sell and push. I know techs don't always like selling things in the field. So I would say take it from an education standpoint of, hey, we just want to make sure that you are aware of, if you hire the wrong people, things can go worse than not hiring someone at all. If they're good people, they're qualified, great. It sounds like there's a big market opportunity for good people, because the overall sentiment, at least with the Florida people I've spoken to, has been, it's underwhelming right now.
It's tough because you get people that do it for so cheap, right? And most people don't know anything about it or don't care about it.
Yeah.
So they're gonna pay $400, not $2,500.
Right.
Because there's no education in our market.
Yep. I would advise them from an education standpoint that the reason they're so cheap is because they're not doing the job that's necessary to protect you and your household, you and your family. They're not taking the steps that are needed after a cleaning to prevent all this fiberglass from blowing out. They're not doing what they need to do a real good job. it is a time-consuming process. I've been doing it for 7 years now, and
And you usually just do one house per day?
yeah, for cleanings, for a full
Per
duct cleaning.
employee, or do you have just one guy on the job, just you, or people?
no, yeah.
2 or 3 guys on the
So we have
job,
2
or-
setups. We've got 2 trailers. If they're smaller homes, so I say smaller being like a 2-unit home, 1 or 2, those are going to be, you know, 1 home for the day, and then maybe like a dryer vent or 2 after that. 3 systems or more, I usually have, you know, both setups at the house, and we're there all day.
Gotcha.
And it,
So remember, he works for Richmond, north of Richmond.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a
Yeah.
damn shame what the world's coming to.
yeah. But
Sorry, I had to make that joke.
no,
Really bad.
he grew up. Anthony Oliver was in the same county as me.
Does he actually? Okay.
Yeah, in Goochland. Yeah, right. But just educate the customer. Say there can be times where it's appropriate. It can be a good thing to do if it's done by someone who takes care to do it right and to keep you and your home safe, and you and your environment. If the mold spore levels are here and you go and put your brushes through and loosen it up, but you don't have negative pressure or air suction, or your shot back hose isn't drawing enough air back, the mold levels are going to go way up by the time you finish your cleaning. And the people that were suffering from those symptoms initially are not going to want to even stay in their home that night. So you got to think about what impact, do no harm,
Right.
What impact am I having by doing this service for the client? Is it to their benefit or not?
Whether we do duct cleaning or whether we refer it to a NADCA duct cleaning contractor, we need to understand how it works. Because we need to be able to go in and say, hey, this house actually is a candidate for duct cleaning. And I don't really care which one of those 2 it is, because I'm not going to have you guys who are currently here as our duct cleaning crew. That's not how that's going to work anyway, by the way. So don't get worried. You're not going to all of a sudden all become duct cleaners. But you do need to understand it, because if you don't understand it, you're not going to know whether or not a job is a candidate for it. And if you're, how many of you have had clients say, hey, I think I need a duct cleaning. What do you think?
All the time.
Like 1,000 times, right? It's all the time people say that. And you need to be able to answer that question, because the answer isn't just yes or no.
Why do you think you need a duct cleaning?
Why do you think you need a duct cleaning? Well, I don't know. They said, I don't know. It seems like something that I heard you need to do it every 2 years. What do you say to that?
Is your home having a catastrophe every 2 years? Are you disgusting and smoke inside? Did you just renovate your home 2 years ago? What would cause you to think that? So normally with like the frequency of a cleaning, it's going to be following a catastrophic event, like a flood, a fire, and there's smoke damage, some like act of God. If wildlife gets into the duct system, we get like possums or things like that will get in there and die, and then it stinks. Mice.
Yeah.
If you're getting things like that, that's gonna be a good time for duct cleaning.
So the answer is that if you tend to your system, if you deal with the causes, you don't need to clean your ducts. You need to clean your ducts if there is something else causing it. So if you have proper filtration with no air bypassing around the filter, this is a lot of the stuff we talked about yesterday. Simple stuff, the stuff we talk about all the time. Having good filters with no air bypass, properly designed, proper air sealing, proper pressure balance inside the home, air distribution, all those things. You get all that right, then you're not going to need to clean your ducts. And again, this is coming from a duct cleaner who does this professionally. That's how you make your money. And you don't need to oversell it, because there's still plenty of cases where people could use, cleaning their ducts. Now again, for us, in a ductboard-based system, I agree with Zach. We're not going to clean ductboard and just leave it. Be like, okay, now we're done. Sealing it afterwards is going to be the approach, and that is a job and a half, let me tell you. Now what we probably, like I said, will do is begin sealing the near system ductwork. And so talk about that a little bit. Why is near system ductwork more important than any other part of the system?
Where is the pressure going to be the highest in the system? Right by the blower. So that's where the air, the velocity is going to be the higher, the turbulence is going to be higher, and that's where you're going to have more fiber shedding risk. It's where you're going to have the humidity or the moisture that can, the water can get on that coating and be, if the system kicks off, it's going to basically drip down. If there's not a layer of dust to kind of hold on to it. So if you have your good filtration, you've coated that ductboard, even if the moisture gets there, it's not going to stay there, and it's not going to get soaked up like a sponge like it does now, right? And by preventing that, you're probably going to prevent growth from going throughout the system, because it starts at the unit. When I go do my inspections, first place I start is at the unit, at the supply panel. I go to the filter rack, I'll look at the coils, I'll look at the return real quick, and then I go and I look at when I do the static pressure, I put my camera inside the static pressure port in the supply plenum, and I'm like, okay, borescope camera, yep, there's some stuff in there. And I know about 90% of the time, if it's lined in Virginia on the supply plenum, it's lined and got growth in it. It is so rare that I see line ductwork that doesn't have any growth in there, and it's either brand new or it was an engineered system.
So for us, we want to get to the place where we're never hiding anything from the client. We're letting them make decisions. We cannot make statements about mold. So clients will ask you that, is that mold? What's our answer?
Nope, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's not no. It's not no, because nope is just as bad as yes. We don't know. The answer is I actually don't know, because you don't actually know.
Nope.
You didn't get a lab test. And so you say like,
Yeah, tongue tingle
and that's
test.
actually not a bad answer. Like, in order to really know for sure, you'd have to get a lab test. That's not something that we do at all.
Nope.
But what we can do is we can replace it.
What about air handling units when if you open it up on a maintenance and a custom seated road, like, is that mold that's mold? Should I say I don't know, or should I say no? That's organic?
Unless you have a lab test, you don't know.
Right.
I-
Do not say no. Do not say no, because
say-
no is not true.
I don't know is a real safe answer.
And again, you can say it in a way that's not like I'm a dummy, I don't know. What I would
Yeah.
say is that, honestly, the only way to know for sure what you're seeing is to do a lab test. Anybody who's telling you they know what it is not telling the truth. That's the only real way to know. But we can clean it up for you. And that's what we do. We clean it up for them. And we're allowed to do that because we don't know what it is. Now, if you're being negligent in leaving something in place that it could actually hurt somebody, that's actually the biggest risk in terms of like a lawsuit or something. If we leave a supply plenum in place and we're attaching to this moldy mess, and we don't say anything to anybody and we don't do anything about it, that's actually the highest risk. And so that's, again, part of our sales process. Part of getting ahead of that needs to be for us to have solutions to these problems and present them to our clients. And that's why this is all about ethical duct cleaning. We want to be ethical ourselves in everything that we do. That's like what Kalos is. That's our name, right? But we also want to partner with people who are going to be ethical. So for us, on the short list of things we want to do is we want to find the NADCA certified contractors in our area who we know we can trust. We're almost definitely going to work with NADCA certification being kind of our standard, and that's the way we can even talk about it. Client says, well, who should I trust? We'll go to the NADCA site, and like you said, look for companies that have a bunch of NADCA certified folks, or check the name of the person who's coming out against the database to see have they been actually NADCA certified, because NADCA doesn't teach sketchy duct cleaning practices. They teach the stuff that Zach's talking about.
Yeah. I would say everything you say and everything you do is your advertisement to the world of who you are and where you're going. So don't leave the mold behind. Don't leave the conversation behind. Maybe even if you're uncomfortable with it, take some pictures, send them to the office, have your office person call the customer.
Yeah, this is where
And at a minimum, someone needs to know. And yeah, if you go to the NADCA site or find a company in the area that you like and reach out to them, I'm sure they're going to be open to working with you. And then get a point of contact in that company that's like, I want an ASCS on site doing the cleaning. That air system cleaning specialist, that's our certification. That would be the best way to ensure that someone at least has a minimum level of competence to clean the system, keep the engineering controls in place, and have some repercussions if they do a poor job. Like they can get their certification revoked. So.
Good, Tyler.
I was just gonna say that, like, again, we're not all gonna be doing duct cleaning here, so it's figuring out how to have the right conversations, the right education, and then handing it off properly to the right team. Right. Those are gonna be the things I'm getting.
And again, so some of you may be like, why are you even having this conversation right now? Because you don't have all this prepared. Because I think it's important for you guys to know now, this is why we're heading in this direction. I want you guys to be in the loop, all right? We're not treating you like mushrooms, putting you, keeping you in the dark and throwing crap at you. We want you to be in the, we want you to be in the loop of what we're working on here. We're gonna be working on things that are these are not easy conversations, right? But like really good conversations tend to not be as easy. We want to be ethical in what we do, which is why it's not like, hey, just throw it under the UV light. Hey, just throw a bipolar in. Sure, sometimes it might do a little something, but that's not really solving people's problems. If people are going to spend money with us, we want it to be money well spent. We want them to get what they paid for. That's really important. And in doing so, people actually tend to be more happy in spending money with you and tend to refer you to their friends and others when they have really good outcomes. And that's what we want to provide to our clients is really good outcomes. And we want people to feel good about the money they spent with us. So that's a win-win, right? That's where we're headed. And for you guys who sometimes, again, all of us can get the attitude sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, another thing, right? Like, oh my gosh, why is it gotta be something else? Well, because, I don't know if you've noticed, there's a lot of sketch out there in the industry. There's a lot of sketchy service providers. And for us, we have to make sure that we're standing out from that sketchiness. And it requires not just not being sketchy, but establishing that gap so the client can actually perceive it. And that's sometimes a little bit hard to do if we're not really clear about what our offerings are, how to talk about them, and how to get to where we want to go. And so what that's going to look like for you guys is things like deploying tools in appropriate situations, knowing about this and how to have conversations about things like duct cleaning, about things like mold when clients ask about it in a way that doesn't necessarily make them, the goal isn't just to make them feel good. The goal is to have them make educated decisions. Again, we want it to be comfortable. We don't want to be the cause of their discomfort, but we want them to be able to make honest and educated decisions so that at the end of the day, they feel really good. It's one of those things, like there's a lot of people who sell opium, makes people feel good in the short term, but in the long run, they're unhappy about how they spent their money. We would rather it be the opposite way, right? We want to sell people the hard truth and let them make good decisions so at the end they're like, man, I'm glad I went with these guys and not those guys. All right, any questions?
In the front.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Really? I'll take.
Go ahead.
How hard is the sealant? Like when it cures? Is it like?
Oh, it's a solid rubber coating.
Okay, so you could cut through. So you'd always want to apply that while it was in place already. You wouldn't coat the ductwork before and then put it together.
No, you could like fabricate the ductboard right there and coat it right then. You could pre-coat it and you can cut it, but then when you go and do the seams, you're still going to want to each of those like sides that you had to cut to facilitate folding it. You're going to have to recoat.
You wouldn't want to paint it before you cut it.
Gotcha.
If you cut it and then paint it,
Oh,
you could probably bend it in the folds, but we're gonna have to experiment with that. Like the coating, we're gonna play with.
I'm thinking like if I'm building a 4-piece, I would cut the piece of the 4-piece and then coat it and then assemble it.
You could do it that way, probably, but you'd still want to paint the seams. What you may end up doing in a lot of cases is just going in with the brush with the heat strips and blower out after it's installed and going through and doing it that way. It depends. I mean, again, that front piece maybe, again, like, are you gonna get it everywhere exactly
No,
perfect?
you're limited by
Maybe
your
not.
access.
You're limited by your access, but you can also cut access holes too.
Yeah.
So you can cut do the 45 cut hole, paint the edges and everything, and then just tape it back in place.
Yeah.
That's another option too.
So if I have like a return box, I don't have a direct return, then I can't get under a platform. That would be something we do on an install.
That's something where you get like a some kind of a stick, or you can do this paint sprayer, but I've gotten, I have like a vacuum pole. That's a hard metal one, and I'll tape a brush on the end of it and have to dip that in the paint and then reach in with the pole. And that would be like how I'd get underneath there from if those coils were above the blower. That's a tough one, but you have that filter rack slot. So
You're
in this
limited by your
situation,
access, basically.
yeah.
I mean, if you're putting a box in,
Right.
you could.
Yeah, on a new install, you can get anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like
And that's kind of what, again, like
There's
I know
really-
what we're saying is like, man, that adds time. It's like, yeah, it does, and it is something we would have to like charge for. We would have to have that be part of it. But I think you all, based on what you've seen, anybody who's worked in the trade knows that that is kind of a good idea. Right? Like ductboard is kind of an issue, right?
Yeah.
And now we're going to come up with things that are like completely ductboard free installation options for our clients. ductwork-free duct systems, upgrades, that kind of thing. Because again, part of the other interest that we have is in coming up with a load of work that we can do in the slow season, like right now. So if we had, as part of our change outs earlier in the year, had sold these other upgrades that we do in the slower season, when you would actually rather be in an attic, that's actually part of the game plan as well.
I don't do duct renovations in July. I do them in January.
We do.
So,
Well, again, it depends on what we're talking about, but no, that's actually part of what we're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
we don't really want to be doing anything major in the attic, other than just the equipment change out in the hot seasons. And
yeah.
I think with clients, if you get them to pay for it up front, and it's just part of the game plan. It's just better planning. We just have to have better planning, load planning, what we actually do, what we don't do. Things like, you know, changing vents and sealing boots, you can do that. I mean, that's something that we can do during the change out pretty easy.
That's something that gets you neighborhoods if they have issues. Like, I've had times where I had turned down a duct cleaning. I said, you don't need this. But I'd already pulled down 4 or 5 of the vents to inspect to come to that conclusion. And I said, why don't we instead, we'll caulk around all these vent boots, we'll put up these high performance registers. And then the next day their neighbors called. And then the next day their neighbors called. And it's just the same builders have the same contractors who make the same issues.
Yeah, and if you imagine if you're pulling, if this is part of the service, you pull the vent down, you seal the inside of the boot with the sealant, clean it, seal the inside of the boot with the sealant, then seal around the edges with caulk mastic, whatever we decide to use, and then you put a better vent up and make sure it's nice and straight and level and everything, and you do that across the entire house. That's a decent amount of time, but that's actually that's a pretty high value upgrade. And then later on, when you go to replace the ducts, you're not going to replace all the boots. You might replace a couple in a couple areas if they're really undersized. But now you can do all the ducts later when it's cool outside and the attic's not so miserable. This is how we're thinking about this stuff, and it's going to take a mind shift, because this idea of, well, that takes long. It's like, who cares if it takes long for you to pay for it, right? Like, the only problem comes in is when it takes long and it's the middle of summer and we've got the next job tomorrow and we can't get to it. That's where the problem comes in. If we can do a little bit of creative thinking, I think we can solve this problem and get a lot of higher end clients who actually really want these sorts of solutions.
Yeah.
Are we gonna eventually have our own duct cleaning set up? Is this the plan?
Well, maybe. I mean, again, step one is going to be to partner with somebody locally to find out who's kind of our local trustworthy contractors, and then probably. But again, we would need to commit, because we would have to get some people NACA certified.
Thanks for watching. If you're willing, give this video a thumbs up and drop us a comment. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to stay updated with all of our future videos. And as a quick reminder, HVAC School isn't just a YouTube channel. Dive deeper with us at our main website, hvacrschool.com. Curious for more knowledge on the go? We've got you covered. Tune into the HVAC School podcast, available on all your favorite podcast apps. And while you're at it, join our thriving Facebook group. Also, don't miss out on our free mobile applications available for both iPhone and Android. We're all about community. For techs, by techs.